Today we're unpacking one of the most famous prophecies ever written. It's a message of incredible hope that was delivered in a time of, well, absolute darkness. And what's so fascinating is that the story begins not with light, but with its complete and total absence. So you've almost certainly heard these words before, right? Maybe in Handel's Messiah around the holidays. They feel so timeless, just brimming with hope and light. But here's the thing. They weren't written for a peaceful world. Not even close. They were a radical promise made to a people who were on the very brink of collapse. And that's really the big question for us today. To truly get what this prophecy is all about, we have to go back in time, way back, over 2,700 years actually, to the world of the prophet Isaiah. So our story begins, a little paradoxically, not with the promise of light, but by first describing its total absence. The prophecy starts by acknowledging this deep, pervasive gloom that had just settled over the entire land. And, this wasn't just some poetic metaphor. This was the real, lived experience for the people in northern Israel back in the 8th century BCE. I mean, they were living in a constant state of distress, fear, and just profound suffering. The prophecy zeroes in on a very specific place. Galilee, the northern part of Israel. Now, this area was a frontier zone, a crossroads of different cultures, and it was seen as being a little too open to foreign influence. But the immediate terrifying threat? That was the brutal Assyrian Empire under a king named Tiglath-Pileser III. And his policy was just devastating. When he conquered a land, he didn't just take it over. He deported its entire population, shattering their culture, their identity, everything. And in Isaiah's time, this brutal military machine was bearing down directly on Galilee. It's in this exact place, this land of darkness, of distress, this land living in the shadow of death, that the prophecy makes its most dramatic turn. It promises that right here, a great light is going to appear. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. Centuries later, in the New Testament, this connection is made explicit. The Gospel of Matthew actually quotes this passage from Isaiah. It says that when Jesus began his public ministry, he didn't go to the capital, Jerusalem. No, he went directly to that same troubled region, to Galilee, to fulfill this very prophecy. The light, it says, had arrived. So the prophecy then zooms in right from the land itself to this child. And it doesn't just announce his birth. It gives him 4 absolutely extraordinary royal titles. And these aren't just names, they're more like a job description, spelling out his character and his entire mission. This king is revealed through 4 specific royal titles. And as we're about to see, each one carries this immense weight, building a complete picture of who this leader is and what he's here to do. Let's break them down one by one. Okay, first up, Wonderful Counselor, or Pele Yoetz in the original Hebrew. Now, that word Pele is the key. It's a word that's usually reserved for God's miraculous acts, like the parting of the Red Sea. So this isn't just a promise of a wise king with some good policies. It's a promise of a leader whose very strategy is a miracle, whose advice can solve unsolvable problems with a kind of supernatural wisdom. Second, he's called Mighty God, or El Gibor. El is a name for God, and Gibor means a hero or a mighty warrior. Now, just imagine you're facing the unstoppable Assyrian army. Hearing this would have been absolutely breathtaking. It painted a picture of a divine champion, a king who wouldn't just lead your army, but who would actually wield God's own power to defeat every single enemy and secure the ultimate victory. The third title is Everlasting Father, or Avi Ad. In ancient thought, calling someone the father of something described their very essence. So, Father of Eternity means this king actually embodies eternity itself. Unlike any mortal king whose reign is temporary and fleeting, his protective, compassionate rule will endure forever. It has no end. And finally, the fourth title, Prince of Peace, or Sar Shalom. And the really crucial point here is that the word shalom means so much more than just the absence of war. It's about wholeness, harmony, social justice. It's the complete restoration of all things to the way they were always meant to be. This king doesn't just stop conflicts. His whole mission is to make everything right. And that incredible vision of shalom leads to the prophecy's absolutely stunning conclusion, the promise that this new king's reign will mean the end of all war forever. The imagery here is just so powerful, isn't it? All the equipment of war, the boots that stomp on the battlefield, the uniforms stained with blood, all of it will be gathered up and completely destroyed, just used as fuel for a fire. This isn't talking about a truce. This is the total annihilation of war itself.
So how in the world does this happen? Well, the prophecy is very clear. This won't be achieved by human strength or some political negotiation. It's going to be a supernatural victory, a final overthrow of all evil and oppression. This king will establish an eternal reign of justice and righteousness from the historic throne of David. And the final line tells us exactly who's behind it all. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. It is a divine guarantee.
And here's a fascinating little side note. The imagery of a final climactic battle in this part of the world, at a specific place called Megiddo, eventually gave us the modern word we all know, Armageddon. It's a term we still use for a final, decisive conflict between good and evil. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This ancient prophecy, born from a world of real suffering, paints this radical picture of an ideal ruler, one with supernatural wisdom, divine power, and the ability to bring true, lasting wholeness. So the question for us is, how does this 2,700-year-old vision still shape our hopes for leadership and for peace in our own world today?